Academy.
Good morning, everybody. Lovely to see some familiar names in the group and some people I don't know. This is a really, really tall order to do in 7 minutes, but I'm going to give it my best shot, okay? And Tara can tell me off if I'm over. So this is all about developing the supply chain to deliver sort of the scale of retrofit that we hope one day we will achieve, 27 million homes or 27 million buildings over 30 years. What you're seeing on screen here is an extract from the training that the Retrofit Academy is best known for at the moment. This is the Retrofit Coordinator course that we have developed over the last decade. And it's something that we've currently got 640 people enrolled on. We've had 240 graduates from this course over the last 12 months. And it's beginning to make a real difference in the certainly in the eco sector, where people are moving over to new standards, which I'll come on to in a moment. So I was asked to just introduce what we did briefly, and you're getting a taste of it there. If anyone wants more information, you can contact me afterwards. Just a bit of context. I think we all know about the 2050 net zero target. There's also a more short-term target around getting properties up to Band C by 2030. 2030 is really not that long away now, is it? So there is action around that. We had to take some steps back before we could take big steps forward. And I've pulled up a picture here of the Each Home Counts review, which took the best part of 4 or 5 years in the last decade, really to look at why the industry was delivering substandard suboptimal work. One of the recommendations of it, of course, was that projects should be led by people who know what they're doing, people like retrofit coordinators. So very much a root and branch reform of an industry that was defective, delivering very high rates of defective work. We also had the need to rebuild trust with householders and other clients, and key to that is the government sponsorship of the trust mark as the quality mark of the sector. And we're all now operating, or large sectors of this retrofit industry are now operating under that. And Trustmark requires the implementation of new British standards. There's a picture here of PAS 2035, which is the most important of those. And it introduces a new code of conduct for the industry, which is like night and day by comparison with the way things have been. A huge change process, in other words. But it's also important to stress that the educational system that we have in terms of higher and further education in this country hasn't taken this issue anywhere near seriously enough over the last couple of decades. And we certainly aren't churning out people from those institutions who know, well, really anything about retrofit by and large. So we've got a huge problem. Now, what we need to do, this is quite a complicated diagram, I won't dwell on, but there are 3 key areas of delivery at the moment. There's a small, high-quality, able-to-pay market, which is a small box on the top right. Then there's a social housing sector, which is mainly about repairs and maintenance. And then we've got this eco sector, which is about £1 billion worth of work aimed at the fuel poverty sector. And what we need to do with all of those circles is grow their size, and we need to upskill them all very significantly. So, that's a very grand vision and very short timescales in order to do those things. Now, PAS 2035 gives us a framework to build around, particularly in terms of new job roles. And what you see on screen here are the key job roles introduced by PAS 2035. You can see there, retrofit coordinator on the right-hand side, the people that we train, people who lead and project manage projects from one end to another. There was the introduction of designers into the retrofit process, which is hugely important. Upskilling retrofit assessors or domestic energy assessors such that they're competent to carry out deeper assessments, not just EPC assessments. But perhaps the key one here is the retrofit installer, which is the huge numbers of people who actually fit things, fit measures, whether they be heat pumps or insulation measures or anything else. And you can see in my picture here that to deliver Band C by 2050, New Economics Foundation report concluded that we needed around 450,000 people, new people often, in order to do that. And the base of that pyramid, the majority of those people are in those trades. And a bit more detail on that here. You know, the challenge is getting bigger and bigger for every year that passes. The deadlines aren't moving, but the amount of work to be done is, and therefore the number of people needed to carry out that work is growing. So this challenge is getting bigger and bigger. And it's not just about reskilling people already in this sector. It's not just about reskilling gas engineers to be heat pump engineers. It's also about introducing lots and lots of new recruits into the sector. We have massive skill shortages in construction as it is, as it exists at the minute. And we're going to create this enormous multi-billion-pound market. So we need to be bringing new people in. And we know that we have quite a significant image problem in terms of recruiting the kind of people that we want to recruit into the sector. So there's some real challenges there. But we do have a vision. And that vision is to create a pathway, a career pathway for people coming in either through trades or in from the professions, and that we have a career path underpinned by valid national occupational standards and appropriate qualifications. And that is a route set out in the new British standards, the qualifications which evidence competence, not just years of experience. So we need to get on with it. And this is my last slide, but most important is what we're going to do about that. Now, central to all of this is delivering more retrofit coordinators. We have 650 or so, 220 graduates, 660 in the machine. We need to be scaling that up so that we're training a couple of thousand people, and we're very much building our capacity to do that. We also are receiving some support from the government to do that quicker and better. The better bit I take very seriously, because whilst we are very good at training people around theory and building physics and why things go wrong and how to avoid them going wrong, there's a very practical element to this. These are new professions that need a lot of support and a lot of guidance. So over the last few months, we've developed a PAS into Practice program, which is all about giving retrofit coordinators the tools of their trade and teaching them how to use those tools so that they can put the theory into effective practice. We've also created the Centre of Excellence. You can see some of our members there on the right-hand side. These are organisations we work with who we're supporting in their journey, really, from being measures installers or existing DEAs, or it could be individuals or organisations on the journey to becoming whole house retrofit companies. We need to scale up what we do, and we have put a series of partnerships in place to help us do that. You can see there we're working with the West Midlands Combined Authority, the GLA, with AGMA, and others, LEPs, local authorities and the like, who have linked into colleges and higher education institutes. So we'll be scaling up our footprint by working in partnership with those type of organisations. We are also about to embark on a very exciting new project, which is aimed at the trades, at the FE sector. This is called the SURE project, which stands for Scaling Up Refurbishment Education, or Retrofit Education, I should say. And again, it's about working with and mentoring colleges so that they can start offering the right kind of further education courses. This is something that we will be supported by the government in doing, and the timescales are quite scary, but we're going to get well stuck into that over the next 3 months. But that's just a flavour of what we do. I hope I stuck to time there, Cara, and I shall leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. You stuck admirably to time there. So without further ado, we'll move on to Beanland.
Hopefully you're seeing some slides there.
We can, Bean, yeah. If you want to just put it on slideshow, if you're able to do that.
Yeah. There we go.
Brilliant.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Super duper. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to come along and give you a few minutes on how to solve the retrofit skills challenge. So I was posed 3 questions, which I'll come to in a second. But the first thing I want to do is say that this is where we need to get to. Our forebears knew exactly where our renewable energy resource was. So that's what we need to get to. And what we must bear in mind, I think a lot of people don't realize, is most, if not all, of our renewable energy resources come from the sun. So everything that we're harvesting in with heat pump technology is all solar energy. It is not deep geothermal. That is a separate technology. So air source, ground source, water source, it is all stored solar energy in the either in the atmosphere or in the upper layers of the planet. So I was posed 3 questions. Developing retrofit heat pump skills specifically. So it's collaboration. We cannot do this on our own. None of us can do this on our own. We have to work with absolutely everybody. And that is manufacturers, it's installers, it's the microgeneration certification scheme, Trustmark we put in there now under the Green Homes Grant, and the ministry. And of course, not just one ministry. It's not just BAYS, it's MHCLG, it's Department for Education, actually it's Department of Health too. I noticed briefly in the chat someone was talking about the problems for health by underheating and poor air quality and what have you, and all those things need to be addressed. We are supporting a whole new style of training initiatives. So the fact that we're on the move as an industry, and you would have seen many of you would have seen the traffic overnight with the announcement from the Prime Minister with his 10-point plan. Clearly our technology is now on the move. We're going to need some whole new styles of training, and those are coming through. We've already got those under construction at the moment. The courses need to be made fit for purpose, and again, absolutely accept that heat pump training courses have not been great to date and need a lot of work, but we're already doing that. We are, I wouldn't say we're ahead of the game because the game's moving very quickly, but we're certainly not starting from a standing point right now. And we need some low temperature heating qualifications. So there is under development a low temperature heating course, which is technology agnostic, because we need to drive the flow temperature of fossil fuels down to a point where we know they're going to condense. So there's a whole starting point of getting properties to the point where they are ready for low temperature heating systems. Doesn't matter whether it's a boiler sitting behind them or whether it's a heat pump or anything else. And potentially, once we've got the assessment of the building that says it is low temperature ready, that could be attached to a future building passport, for example. And then we have our schools initiative. You know, the tagline there, you can see our earth, use it, don't abuse it. So we're looking to bring a program into schools to start bringing through the installers that we need for the future. Because at the moment, if you said to children, come and have a career in heating, they would be thinking oil, gas, you know, dirty. Actually, it's not dirty. We're digital. And we need to get this message across to school children. And I think if we can, through the sort of initiatives that my colleagues are working up, then I think we can attract a whole new demographic into the industry. And critically, I think more young girls, because we are now connected, we're smart. It's a very, very different environment if people are looking to come into the heat pump segment. So the barriers that we've seen so far, well, the big barrier is future market visibility. And in the poll, I thought it was very interesting that people were saying, you know, lack of policy and lack of funding. The funding clearly needs to be dealt with one way or another, but it's the policy that really is the barrier here, because at the moment, we're in a cyclical problem. The training isn't very good at the moment because there's no demand for it. And there's no demand for it because the sector, the heating engineers at the moment who are in the fossil fuel segment, cannot see future market visibility for electrification. Well, at least until 10:30 last night they couldn't. So that needs to be fixed. We've got a lack of understanding amongst the school leavers, which we're looking to address. The average age of fossil fuel technicians and engineers is high, so that schools initiative is really, really important. The quality of existing training, we've said, is weak and needs to be dealt with. We're working on that. We got low consumer demand because there's general low awareness of low carbon technologies amongst homeowners. So most people have no idea, for example, they already own a whole load of heat pumps. You know, everybody has relied on heat pumps to keep their milk fresh for decades. Many people now have a separate freezer as well. It's another heat pump. A lot of people might have heat pumps in their tumble dryers these days. A lot of us have got heat pumps in our cars, air conditioning. So we've got heat pumps, they're everywhere. But many people have no idea. So they think this is a slightly new and a worrying technology. Not a bit of it. And we need to get that message across. And then we've got the incumbents campaign of sort of fear and doubt and disruption. And I understand that. And we're talking to people like the GMB, trying to reassure them that this is not going to be seriously detrimental to jobs amongst their members. And yes, possibly some disruption. But I've been citing my lovely grandparents recently. Yeah, I can remember when they put central heating into their house. Boy, was that disruptive. Speak to them 6 months later and say, would you rather still be bringing in the coal? Of course they wouldn't. So they saw the benefit and they were prepared to take the disruption to get to the end game. And then finally, this question about government policy requirements, and back to the poll again, policy. These are in no particular order, but they're all vital. So local government to lead by example. The Public Building Decarbonisation Fund, perfect. You know, let's get our public buildings decarbonised. Local plans to proactively seek out waste heat opportunities. You know, we're very bad at identifying waste heat, and we need to ease the planning pathway for heat networks. 20% of properties potentially will be on networks by the time we get to 2050. Central government needs to start tackling the spark gap. You know, this is the difference between the price of electricity and the price of gas. All the environmental levies are on electricity. That needs to change. We need MHCLG to urgently change Part L. This is the carbon factors that are sitting inside the SAP process, which means EPCs cannot recommend heat pumps at the moment. We need adoption of the low temperature heating qualification and potentially a voucher to fund the home assessments under the PAS 2035 that David was talking about, because it worries me that to have seriously qualified assessors, the costs could be a barrier for homeowners. So it's a bit of a dance, but that's where we are. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Bean. Okay, I have some interesting thoughts from there. I think get the impression both from David and from Bean that how this sector is really moving very rapidly, and we've got a lot of catching up to do. So with that, I will hand over to Casey from Guru Systems.
Thanks, Cara. Have you got a slide with my name on it?
Yes.
Brilliant. Then we're good to go. Okay, so I am Casey Cole. I'm the CEO of Guru Systems. I'm going to tell you a little bit about us. We are a small technology company based in London, working on energy projects across the UK. We provide hardware and software as a service to low carbon energy projects, mainly to heat networks, but also other types of low carbon energy. So we're installed in about 32,000 homes across the UK, and that means hardware with an interface for the resident, but also connected back to server-side software that the energy system operator uses. We do things like payment processing, but we are primarily concerned with monitoring energy systems, identifying where there are problems and verifying the outcomes. So this is about using digital technology to ensure that these systems work as well as everybody promised. Increasingly, we're asked to look not just at the energy systems, but also at things like building fabric. So verifying that the thermal performance of dwellings is as promised. And in the chat already today, we've been talking about the problems of verifying outcomes. That's what we spend a lot of the day job doing. What's a heat network? So heat networks are a way of using low and zero carbon heat sources, which in many cases tend to be medium to large scale. So you put those in an energy center and then distribute heat out to your customers. So that's what this slide is showing. If you're not familiar with heat pumps already, Guru was very pleased to be the winner of the Energy Innovation Award at Ashden this year for the UK. And with some of the prize that comes with that, we have put together some introduction videos. Tells you more about what a heat network is, how it fits into the bigger picture, and why we need them to help decarbonize. So we would encourage you to go and check that out. You can find them on our website. It's crucial to point out that the decarbonization of heat cannot rely on new build alone. We know that something like 18% or more of UK heat demand will need to be delivered over heat networks by 2050 if we're to cost effectively meet our decarbonization requirements. Something like 43% of homes in 2050 could be supplied by heat networks cost effectively, according to the government. And the old stat of 80% of the stock that is going to be around in 2050 is already with us. So you put these things together, and what it points to is that retrofit of dwellings is fundamental to decarbonization of heat. Moving on to jobs, the Heat Network Industry Council, which is a group of industry bodies doing something that's similar to what the Wind Industry Council did a few years back, an ask and offer to government. But they are offering 35,000 new direct jobs in heat networks by 2050. That's a number of construction-related roles, especially in the short term. But the report from Bayes, when Bayes went and did research on skills gaps and job creation in this space, they found that digital skills are increasing in importance. And that includes advanced IT, complex data analytics, cybersecurity, AR, etc. So although we're talking about energy projects, there is a large digital element to them. And that's the space that Guru works in. Lots of those jobs are at Guru. So we've doubled in size for the last couple of years, no, 3 years, and we'll continue to grow. So how can local and national government help? At the national government level, we are looking for support of industry growth. So we're participating in the Heat Network Industry Council. We're leading the digitalization work as part of HNIC. We need to learn from HNIP, which was the previous capital funding program from government to spur low carbon heat networks in order to get its successor right. Scotland is already legislating on zoning. So this is where you would take a section of a local authority and you would have a first choice energy solution for that physical area. At the local government level, making use of the Heat Networks Delivery Unit within Bayes, there's there is grant funding there for project work, including heat networks in the local plan. Then crucially, verifying outcomes. So we know that zero carbon work, low energy retrofit, and healthy homes are often not the same thing. In fact, often those projects result in homes that are less healthy to live in because of air quality issues or other build quality issues. So through the verification of outcomes, we have to prove that the work that we're carrying out in low energy retrofit is achieving the outcomes that we expected. We have to report on that data. We have to learn fast in order to then change tack while we're in motion. And then finally, follow the GLA's lead and require operational efficiencies and other data to be submitted and then shared so that you're reporting against design, again, so you can see real world outcomes. That's the mayor's Be Seen requirement. And that was my ultra fast canter through the issues. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Casey. And we're keen to get a perspective on the range of jobs available, and that the kind of the smart aspect, the digital tools that and skills that are going to be needed are important, as well as obviously the trades jobs that are going to need to be enhanced in the way that David talked about. So over to you, Dianna, now from London Councils.
Hi, hopefully you can see my presentation on the screen.
We can see it in presentation view.
Okay. Sorry.
It doesn't matter too much if that's all you can show us.
Right, okay.
It's not sharing at the minute.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, I don't know what I've done there. Apologies. Okay, I'm going to do that. Sorry, I may have shared the wrong one, so I'll try this one.
That's fine. And then if you go into slideshow.
Is that better?
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. Apologies. Hi, everybody. My name's Dianna Neale. I am the Strategic Lead for Enterprise Economy and Skills at London Councils, which is a membership organisation of all the London boroughs. I'm going to talk to you today about what we've been doing on the London Recovery Programme and how that relates to green skills. And then I've also been asked to say a little bit about what more national government can do to empower local authorities to take more action on retrofit skills. So just to say a little bit about the London Recovery Board. It's leading London's work on the recovery from the pandemic. It's jointly chaired by the Mayor of London and the Chair of London Councils, and it brings leaders together from across London's government, business and civil society to oversee that long-term recovery effort. You'll see it's got this grand challenge, but it also then has a number of key outcomes, cross-cutting principles and engagement. And among those key outcomes are around reversing the rising unemployment and lost economic growth that's been caused by the pandemic, narrowing social, economic and health inequalities, but also accelerating the delivery of a cleaner and greener London. So basically, this is meant to be a green recovery in terms of the recovery programme. The board's taken a missions-based approach to the recovery programme to try and build coalitions, I guess, of partners and projects to achieve these different missions. There are 9 in total, and I'm going to talk to you, as you'll see, there's a Green New Deal mission, which I'll touch on briefly, but I'm going to focus on the Helping Londoners into Good Work mission. All of these missions, I think, touch on a green recovery. For example, High Streets for All, we could see that as an area where you could have a lot of activity around green recovery. So in terms of the Green New Deal mission, just to highlight, that's got the ambition of doubling the size of London's green economy by 2030 to accelerate job creation for all. So that's a real kind of demand side focus. And as you can see, in terms of the types of activities that might be delivered this mission, it does include scale up programs to retrofit and improve existing buildings in order to create jobs, and also, of course, crucially tackle fuel poverty, which is another big issue. There's a big focus on economics in this, but there also is a big focus on communities and addressing inequality. So going on to the Helping Londoners into Good Work mission. So really the aim of this mission is supporting Londoners into good jobs with a focus on sectors key to London's economy. And we have focused on sectors where we think there's going to be real growth, and that does include the green sector and the green economy. And one of the strands of activity, which you'll see sort of third bullet point down, is establishing these sector-specific London Academies to support Londoners to gain relevant skills and move into good work, and among that includes a sort of Green Skills Academy. I think the first thing to sort of say is, what do we mean by green skills? And that's something that we've been grappling with. A lot of people, it covers a huge definition, a wide definition. I think we want to try and get where everybody across London, and particularly in London government, is working to a similar definition. Certainly the GLA is using BASE's low carbon and environmental goods and services framework to define green, which has 3 main sectors: low carbon, environmental and renewable energy, and then it's got 24 underlying subsectors. I think we feel retrofitting is a particularly important focus area for green jobs, just because it's so essential to addressing climate change. I think that in London, homes and workplaces account for 78% of emissions. So, you know, it's something that we really need to tackle. And as I said before, to tackle poverty, but also because we think it will really create a lot of jobs. So according to LGA analysis, we could see around 45,000 new jobs in energy efficiency and low carbon heat in London by 2030. So that's a significant opportunity. And then I think the second question that often comes up is, what do we mean by academies? And I think the word academy is a bit perhaps misleading. We aren't necessarily talking about a physical building, but really a set of interventions that are really going to boost the take-up of green skills and help coordinate delivery, because I think we need to build on what's there and identify the gaps to see to where there isn't provision, which I think the other speakers have spoken about in detail. You may be aware, and it could follow a similar model to the Mayor's Construction Academy. That's kind of got 7 hubs across London, and it aims to join up construction skills provision at a kind of local level. So it's building on what is already there. And as I said before, I think we need to work with existing structures. So for example, we have a construction skills academy. That may be the best place to look at how do we effectively green construction skills jobs and make that training available to London. So we're at the early stages, I think, of scoping out the plans for a Green Skills Academy. We're working with the GLA. As I say, we're very much better trying to understand the nature of demand for green skills and what interventions would be most effective. And we're in the process of talking to stakeholders, employers, training providers to develop a kind of action plan early in the new year. And I think certainly, as I say, our key challenges: what's the demand and what are the gaps, and therefore what do we need to grow in order to meet the carbon reduction targets in areas such as retrofitting, but give people the skills that, as previous speakers have said, are not necessarily there. I think really important to know what demand looks like, because skills providers are paid and financially incentivized to attract people on their courses. It's all about bums on seats and getting them into a qualification. So giving skills providers certainty around this, or getting them into a space where they can kind of safely take some of those risks, I think is really important. And then clearly we need to consider how the adult education budget, which is delegated to the Mayor of London, can be used to support that agenda. There's £318 million a year sitting there. It's spent on all sorts of different things, but how can we do that? And I know the GLA is looking a bit more strategically about how the AEB can sort of support the recovery work. And then I think in terms of just finally going on to the last slide, in terms of what more can be done and how can national government support some of this. Well, I think we clearly think that government should provide a kind of good national policy framework. This is new areas in some ways, and access to funding, both public and private, to support both the demand and supply side for retrofitting. It's really good to hear about the government's recently green skills, Green Jobs Task Force, I think, which is going to focus on immediate skills for building back greener homes, including retrofitting. So that's a good move. But I think we should also be clear about what's being best delivered at maybe at the national level, but also at a local level. We really believe that a solely top-down approach won't work. London's opportunities and needs are very different from those in other parts of the country, but they can also vary across London. We've got a hugely diverse city. So I think it's important to do that. Also, as boroughs, we're well connected into those diverse communities that I think earlier speakers were talking about, because we do want this to be an inclusive process and industry, because a key challenge for London is that we often grow the jobs, but do all the Londoners get those jobs and do they get the pathway to progression? London Councils has been calling on the government to increase funding for councils to retrofit energy efficient buildings. Boroughs have already identified 375 shovel-ready projects with about a 1.35 billion pipeline of green recovery activity, and that includes the retrofitting of 18 large-scale public buildings, 29 schools and thousands of homes across the capital. And London's authorities are already funding more than 950 million of these costs, but we need an extra 150 million in 2021 to really make full progress on this. So funding is needed, and interesting to see the £1 billion of funding announced today, which we think is a good start, but we need more and we need longer term certainty. And based on those projects, we think an estimated 2,000 jobs could be created if we got that additional funding, which is really important for the recovery. And then finally, just to say, I think working with employers and the private sector is going to be really important as well. London's skills system is often produces people with skills, but they're not always the skills that employers need. So getting that right within the green skills sector and for retrofitting will be absolutely key. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dianna. Encouraging to see all of that activity going on at the local level, and look forward to seeing what happens with the Green Academy. So if you'd like to stop sharing your screen, that would be great. Actually, just a first question, which perhaps would be most relevant for Bean and for David. Do you feel that the way that we're designing apprenticeships and creating new apprenticeship standards are the right voices in the room for doing that? Is it a process that works in relation to green skills? David, do you want to take that one first?
I'll try. It's not something we've been heavily involved in, and I'm not aware of any apprenticeship standards that have included retrofits at any sort of scale, and I have been involved in this sector for over a decade now, so I'd have to say no, I don't think they are. The other thing, it's a constant bugbear of mine, is people use the terms retrofit and renewables interchangeably, and we have silos within. Retrofit includes fabric, it includes building services, it includes renewables. They're all part of refurbishing people's homes. That's what people care about. They don't see those silos, and yet we as an industry, a sector, do. And we very rarely get a truly representative group of people across all of those sectors into one room, which is exactly what we do need to be doing.
Yeah, thank you, David. And Bean, your thoughts?
To be honest, I'm not that well equipped to speak about the apprenticeships, but we have people on the team who are. So they've been working with the providers of apprenticeships to get heat pump training back into the syllabus. Heat pumps actually were being dropped from the apprenticeship syllabus on low carbon technologies because of this lack of demand issue. And not surprisingly, the poor apprentices were saying, where are the jobs going to be? And they look at the gas market and they say, I'll take the gas module, thanks very much. We are back in, I believe, from next September. And the way that was done was by taking design out. So the issue was design was seen as too complicated, design of heat pump systems for apprenticeship level. And I think that's probably fair. And so we're back in on the installer basis only. And the key, of course, is to get as many people capable of installing as possible, because one designer can keep a whole load of installers busy. So we can bring the designer training on afterwards.
Thank you very much. There was a question, a clarification question, if people know the answer to it, whether the public sector decarbonisation fund deadlines, are those being extended as well? Is there any clarity about that yet? I know this is all very new.
Nothing formal, but our understanding is that the deadline is going to be extended. We're not completely sure, but it looks as if it will be extended out to the end of March 2022, which, to be honest, has to be a recognition of the fact that public procurement cannot work that fast. You know, it would be impossible to start from scratch with any public body to get them to agree a project, sort the funding issues out, and place, go through a tender process by the 31st of March of next year, let alone build the project. So, yeah, I think we're reasonably confident that that scheme is going to be extended, which is really very good news, because we could spend the whole 1 billion quite happily.
Yeah. Okay.
And do a good job with it.
Thank you. Thanks. And just there was a point made on the chat about how many people from training providers or linked to training providers are on this call. If you are from a training provider or linked to providing training, could you just please put yes or something on the chat, and just so we can see if there are any people on the call from training providers. Okay, LSBU. Okay. So David, obviously, and perhaps a couple of others. Fine. And then a question about sort of training for trades. So I don't know, possibly, David, this might be best for you, just in terms of, obviously you're focused a lot on the retrofit coordinators, but there is a need, which you have touched on, to get trades trained up further. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm limited in what I can say because we're still waiting for the fine detail to be approved. But there was something called the Green Home Grant Skills and Training Competition, which the government launched a couple of months back, and we've had a sort of outline approval of our bid there. The main focus is on training for the trades. There is a requirement under the PAS 2030 standard, which is the installer standard, that all operatives, as in all installers, hold national vocational qualifications, which are linked to insulation and building treatments. Charlie Baker makes a very good point on the chat that those courses and qualifications aren't generally very widely available. So our project tries to address that in two ways. Firstly, we're going to work with lots of providers across the country to give people a short course in whole house retrofit. So all these new jobs that are going to be created around retrofit will be receiving induction through us into that way of working, which will bear a small volume of credit towards a later NVQ that they'll have to start. And they will take 18 months to 2 years for people to gain. The second part of our project is then to stimulate that network of providers and awarding bodies and others to actually create those courses and create the demand for those courses, because there needs to be tens of thousands of people doing those through their local colleges, through their local providers. So yeah, that's a big focus for the first quarter of next year for us.
Thanks, David. There's a question on collaboration. I think Dianna and Bean emphasised the need for collaboration in their talks. Perhaps what is the kind of, how does that work in practicality? What's the first step for collaborating with, whether that's with further education providers, local authorities or national governments? So how does that actually look like?
And I'm just thinking, actually, Casey, do you want to pick that up in terms of getting access to train people from your perspective and how you're collaborating?
It is a tricky proposition. What's interesting, going back to the questions about oil and gas, we are seeing people who might have gone into the oil and gas sector more interested in green jobs now with the obvious trends in the oil and gas market. We have collaborated with a number of universities to get information directly in front of grads about the possibilities that are in front of them. So with the kind of jobs that I was talking about earlier in my presentation, digital jobs tend to be tied to university programs for the most part. In some cases, there are apprenticeships. We've taken apprentices through, particularly around networking and other on-site installation skills. So it isn't exclusively a university training domain, but that does tend to dominate. So we would partner with the universities themselves and try and get that information out there, attract great grads, but also just get people informed about the possibilities that are open to them.
And perhaps David or Bean, what do you see? Do you see further education colleges and other potential collaborators as becoming really interested in this agenda now, or do you think there's still a lag because they think the demand's not there?
Well, I think to date there's still a lag, because that's why the courses, the content of the courses has become so out of date, because there was no demand, so they weren't prepared to invest in keeping the content current. Clearly, announcements of the sort that we've seen last night are going to transform that. The concept of trying to get up to 600,000 units per annum by 2028 clearly means that there's going to be demand. So we're already working in the generation of the initial course for the retraining of existing fossil fuels installers, and that will be coupled with this low temperature heating training course, which actually I think that government are quite keen to see deployed, regardless of whether you're going for a low emissions heat technology, whether you're going for a heat pump or something, even if you're going for gas and oil, because in the revision to Part L, which we are eagerly awaiting, it's highly likely we're going to get a mandated maximum flow temperature of 55 degrees, regardless of what's in the plant room. So low temperature heating training is really important, regardless of whether you're going to go to a heat pump or not. And then we've been working with MCS and many of the manufacturers and the installers and other parts of the industry to create the new criteria for the first retraining program for existing fossil fuel installers. And those courses are now being built, and they should be available by the end of the year. We think we can do 12,000 engineers a year with current resources.
Thank you. And David?
Yeah, well, I was going to give you an example of something that's happening. I referred to it in my presentation that with the SURE project, the Scaling Up Retrofit Education project, we've partnered with the combined authorities and key regional authorities in each region of England. And one of the things we've done is convene a group of the individuals working for those authorities who are responsible for the development of the retrofit skills strategies. They're all looking at those things separately. We want to bring them together so that they can actually join up and share what they're doing and hopefully improve. Each of them improve. That will then cascade down through all of the colleges and the universities that sort of sit under them. And I think that's really, really important.
Great. And so if you're a local authority officer and you want to boost local green jobs, what should you be doing right now? Question for
me to come in.
Yes.
I mean, I think David made a good point about boroughs and local authorities collaborating. You've got to understand your local patch, but I think, clearly this is bigger than just maybe one local authority, and it's a new area. So actually, I think South London Partnership, which is a federation of a partnership of around 5 South London authorities, are doing some work to try and understand green skills opportunities and demand and what is the provision within their area. So they're starting to kind of understand that. So you can do that locally, but I think it's going to be it might be also worth looking at where you can collaborate with other local authorities on that, because also colleges tend to, yes, they're rooted in a particular place, but they often then draw in their students from a range of local authorities. And then clearly we are working with the GLA to sort of set that kind of strategic agenda as well, and look at that across London. But yeah, I would suggest that.
Okay, any thoughts from Casey, David, or Bean? Actions for local authorities, what should they be doing?
I mean, there's two major things happening at the minute in that world. One is something called the LAD scheme, the Local Authority Delivery Scheme, which many local authorities are bidding into. I believe there's £500 million of funding available before the end of March, and another 300 million available after. I may have those slightly the wrong way, but a very significant amount of money. And that will be the focus of what many local authorities do. But I mean, that's £10,000 per property on quite a significant scale. So they can use that. What they need to do is join that up with how do we create jobs using that money, and what skills do we need to give people so that they can fulfil those jobs. And we are, I mean, we're running a whole load of PAS 2035 clinics with local authorities at the minute, which are sold out. It's crazy, the demand for them. So attend one of those would be probably a good start.
Okay, I'm just going to move on to one more question. We're just running short of time. So a question from Alex. Thinking about all of the retrofit roles from David's slides, the reality is that the SMEs in particular shelled out time and money to get Green Deal accredited, so they're resistant to shell out again. A list of 10 vague aims isn't robust enough to encourage them. Trouble with local authority delivery is that there are not enough EPC and RCs, I'm assuming you mean retrofit coordinators. So is this going to be enough to overcome the reticence, the people burnt by Green Deal, etc.? David, do you want to answer that one?
Well, can I answer the second bit of Alex's question, which is easy to answer? The point about there not being enough retrofit coordinators, I disagree with. We have 230 qualified retrofit coordinators, a lot of whom moan about not being able to find enough work as retrofit coordinators. So more than enough to service LAD. The other stuff, I mean, there's not a lot we can do about the past, is there really? The Green Deal was a total flop. It didn't have appropriate standards in place, and it was a disaster from start to finish. What can we do? We could stare at our navels and say, well, the past is really troubled, we shouldn't try again in the future, or we can dust ourselves down and get on with it, which is what we try and do. Sorry to be a bit flippant with that answer.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all of the questions and for the speakers. I think that there is cynicism because of what's happened in the past, but I also detect some real optimism from, probably government policy isn't all that we'd want it to be, but there are shifts in the right direction, and there are organisations, it's like David's, like Guru Systems, like Heat Pump Federation, and at a local level in London councils that are really, really actively pushing forward on this. So I think that there is some cause for optimism here. So I'd like to say thanks for excellent presentations from each of the speakers, and thanks to the audience. And just finally, a reminder that our new Green Skills Award will be opening for applications on the 6th of January. We're looking forward to showcasing some great work. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Cara.
No worries. Lots of stuff on the chat.
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks, Cara.
Someone's asking if the slides can be shared. Are you going to publish the slides?
Yeah, I just wanted to check with all of you if that's okay for us to put your slides up.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can you, if you publish them, can you either convert them to PDF, or I can send you a PDF copy if you wish?
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll send you a PDF, and then you can publish away. It's fine.
Great.
I know that people can dismantle PDFs these days, but
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, there's nothing top secret in there.
Yeah.
It's just habit. It's good habit to be in, I think. So lots of active chatter there.
Yeah, there certainly was. I don't know about you, but I find it could be quite challenging listening and following chat at the same time.
Yeah. And when we're doing our webinars, we always have someone sitting alongside whose sole job is to monitor the chat and to feed the questions, rather than everybody trying to do it at the same time. You're quite right, you can't do it all. So yeah, No, that's fine. I thought it was good. Good flow of questions.
Yeah.
It was interesting how the chat was a bit cynical at the start, and then I was thinking, oh, here we go, and then it kind of throughout the hour got very constructive.
I've got to go, but thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dianna. I think it's really good to get the authority perspective.
Sorry, I was a bit more, think a bit more high level than everybody else, so apologies.
No, but I think it was a statement of intent. I think it was, it came across really well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dianna.
Dean and I were in the same meeting